At Lincoln High, there was a girl who never really stood out in the usual way. She wasn't the loudest, the most popular, or the most athletic. She sat quietly at the back of the classroom, her notebooks neatly stacked, her pen always ready to scribble notes or draw diagrams. People often overlooked her, which was exactly how she liked it. She loved reading, solving problems, and learning new things, but her interests didn't make her many friends. Most of her classmates didn't understand her, and a few even found it easy to pick on her. The girl's mornings started early. She would wake up, have a quick breakfast, and get ready for school. Her uniform was always neat, her hair tied back, and she carried her backpack that seemed to have a lifetime of books stuffed inside. She liked her routine. It made her feel in control of a world that often felt chaotic. The hallways of Lincoln High, however, were anything but calm. Every day she walked through them, she could feel eyes on her, whispers trailing behind her, and sometimes the cruel smirks of those who wanted to make her feel small. There was a group of students who made it their mission to tease anyone who seemed different. They didn't have a specific reason to target her. It was more like a game to them. If someone looked too quiet, too smart, or too awkward, they became their next victim. This girl fit all those categories, and the bullies wasted no time in making her life difficult. Some days it was little things. Knocking her books off her desk, making jokes about the way she spoke, or calling her names that made her stomach tighten. Other days it was more noticeable, like blocking her way in the hallway or stealing a piece of paper she needed for class. She never yelled back. She never cursed them or tried to fight physically. She had learned early that reacting with anger only gave them the satisfaction they were looking for. Instead, she stayed calm, took deep breaths, and moved on. Teachers often saw the incidents, but they shrugged them off as normal teen behavior, saying things like, "Kids will be kids." That was frustrating for her, but she had accepted that she couldn't count on anyone else to make her problems go away. Her friends, the few she had, admired her patience. They would sometimes try to stick up for her, but they were not as brave as she was in their own ways. The girl, however, didn't need protection. She had a side to herself that no one at school could see, a side that gave her strength when the world tried to push her down. At lunchtime, she would sit alone under a big oak tree in the schoolyard, opening a book and diving into a world far away from the noisy chatter of the cafeteria. She liked reading about history, science, and stories of people who overcame incredible challenges. In her mind, she imagined herself as one of those heroes, calm, composed, and able to face anything. Sometimes the bullies would approach her while she was eating. They would tease her about her lunch, knock her books over, or make snide comments about her clothes. She would ignore them, picking up her books and continuing to read as if they didn't exist. The more they tried, the less power they seemed to have over her, though they didn't realize it. Each time, she remained unshaken, and each time, they grew more frustrated. She had a secret that no one at school knew, a side of her that was strong, disciplined, and incredibly skilled. After school, while her classmates went home or hung out with friends, she would head to a small boxing gym in the next town. There, she transformed from the quiet, nerdy girl everyone saw at school into a fierce competitor. Her gloves were like extensions of her arms, her movements precise and controlled, and her mind completely focused. She had won regional and national competitions, earning medals, trophies, and the respect of everyone in the boxing community. She trained with intensity, waking up early for runs, practicing footwork, and sparring with people who were much bigger and stronger than her. Her coach often marveled at her determination. "You have the heart of a champion," he would say. "Never let anyone take that away from you." She kept that side of herself hidden at school. No one could imagine that the quiet girl who read books under a tree was also a national boxing champion. That secret gave her a sense of power, even if it was invisible to the rest of the world. The contrast between her two worlds was stark. At school, she was underestimated, laughed at, and overlooked. At the gym, she was admired, respected, and feared in the ring. It was almost like living two lives, and she liked it that way. She didn't need anyone at school to know her full potential. She knew it herself, and that was enough. One day, the bullies decided to make a bigger show of their teasing. They surrounded her in the hallway, blocking her path, and started making fun of her clothes and the way she walked. She stayed calm, refusing to give them the reaction they wanted. They pushed a little harder, thinking that their numbers would intimidate her. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she took a slow, deep breath, steadying herself. Her mind wandered for a moment to the gym, remembering the countless hours she had spent training. She remembered the lessons of patience, control, and focus her coach had taught her. She remembered how to stand her ground without aggression. The bullies didn't know it yet, but she was more prepared to face challenges than anyone could imagine. That day, she walked past them without a word, her head held high. The bullies were left stunned. They didn't understand why she wasn't reacting, why she wasn't scared. It was the first time they realized that maybe, just maybe, they had underestimated her. Back in her classroom, she picked up her books and sat down. Her heart was calm, her mind clear. She had faced another round of bullying and had come out unshaken. It wasn't about winning or losing against them. It was about knowing her own strength, even if no one else did. Her secret life as a champion gave her confidence that no teasing, no joke, and no cruel comment could take away. And though the bullies continued their attempts, they had no idea that the quiet, nerdy girl they thought they could control was living a life full of discipline, courage, and victories that they couldn't even imagine. She knew the day would come when they would learn the truth. Until then, she would keep being herself, reading her books, training in secret, and quietly proving to herself every day that strength doesn't always have to be loud to be real. The days passed, and the quiet girl continued her routine, walking through the crowded hallways of Lincoln High with her head down, headphones sometimes in her ears, and her backpack snugly on her shoulders. The bullies didn't stop. If anything, their teasing became more frequent and more personal. They had discovered that little things could hurt her, like pointing out a smudge on her shirt, a messy strand of hair, or the way she spoke when answering a question in class. They would snicker behind her back, whispering insults so that she could hear them without them being fully caught by a teacher. Her classmates often looked on silently. Some felt sorry for her but were too afraid to step in. Others thought it was entertaining, not realizing the emotional weight of the repeated teasing. Even the teachers, who occasionally noticed, brushed it off, believing that minor conflicts were part of growing up. But the girl had learned to endure quietly, to focus on what she could control instead of reacting to the chaos around her. During class, she immersed herself in her studies, knowing that her intellect was her anchor. Numbers, words, equations, and stories became her refuge. She loved how a problem had one solution, how a paragraph could convey a universe of meaning, and how history revealed the strength of ordinary people in extraordinary situations. The bullies tried to interrupt her focus with small jabs, throwing erasers, smirking, or making loud comments, but she had perfected the art of tuning them out. Each time, she reminded herself that their actions could not define her. At lunch, she still sought her quiet corner under the old oak tree, away from the noisy cafeteria. She unpacked her lunch and opened a book or jotted down notes in her journal. Sometimes, she drew diagrams of imagined machines or wrote stories where ordinary people became heroes in extraordinary situations. These small creative acts kept her grounded, giving her a sense of control in a school environment where she often felt powerless. Even when the bullies tried to disrupt her routine during lunch, she didn't react angrily. They would approach, make fun of her food, knock her books over, or try to start arguments. She learned to stand her ground calmly, picking up her belongings and moving as if nothing had happened. This puzzled them. They were used to people reacting with fear or anger, but her calmness made their efforts feel ineffective. This, however, only fueled their determination. They believed that if they kept pushing, they could break her composure eventually. The girl's secret life as a boxing champion remained hidden from everyone at school. After classes ended, she would change into her training clothes and head to a small boxing gym in the neighboring town. There, she was transformed. No one called her nerdy or awkward. No one judged her because of her quiet nature. The gym was a place where her strength, skill, and dedication were recognized and respected. She trained with discipline, running laps around the park, practicing footwork drills, and sparring with opponents who often underestimated her because of her size and quiet demeanor. Her coach noticed her incredible work ethic. "You have an amazing drive," he often said. "Remember, strength isn't just about muscles. It's about focus and control. Never forget that." The girl absorbed these lessons, knowing that they applied not just in the ring, but in life outside the gym as well. She understood that her calmness at school was a reflection of this discipline, and that one day, the bullies would see that she was more capable than they imagined. At home, she kept her trophies and medals neatly on a shelf in her room. They were symbols of her accomplishments, reminders that her strength extended beyond the academic and into the physical world as well. She would sometimes sit on her bed, looking at them quietly, feeling a sense of pride and determination. Each medal was proof that she had overcome challenges, and each one reminded her that the opinions of bullies held no power over her real abilities. One day, the bullying escalated. It started in the classroom when the bullies purposely tripped her while she was walking to her desk. Her books scattered across the floor, and she felt the familiar sting of embarrassment as heads turned to watch. But instead of reacting angrily, she simply knelt down, picked up her books, and continued with her work. The bullies were confused by her lack of reaction. Their usual tactics weren't working, and they felt frustrated. During lunch, they followed her to her usual spot under the oak tree. They surrounded her, laughing and making comments about her appearance and her quiet nature. Some tried to snatch her lunch bag or toss her book to the ground. Each time, she calmly took her things back, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her upset. The more they pushed, the more she realized that her inner strength was what truly mattered. She understood that their actions were a reflection of their insecurity, not her worth. She thought about the lessons she learned in boxing. Stay focused, maintain control, and use energy wisely. These lessons helped her remain composed in the face of constant provocation. She realized that reacting with anger or fear would only give the bullies the attention they craved. Instead, she used her patience and intelligence to navigate each encounter carefully. Her mind remained sharp, analyzing their behavior and predicting their next moves. Despite the daily challenges, she found small joys in her routine. Walking home from school, she would sometimes take a longer route through the park, feeling the wind on her face and the freedom of space around her. She noticed details others often ignored: the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, the sound of birds, the subtle patterns in nature. These small moments of beauty reminded her that there was more to life than the bullying she endured at school. Her family noticed her calm demeanor and encouraged her to keep pursuing her passions. They knew about her boxing achievements and supported her every step of the way. They reminded her that her strength came from within and that no one's words could diminish her accomplishments. This support gave her confidence and reinforced her belief that she didn't need validation from the bullies or even from her classmates. Even when she returned to the gym in the evenings, she carried the lessons from school into her training. She pushed herself harder, knowing that her ability to stay composed in the face of bullying was connected to her discipline in the ring. Each punch, each dodge, each movement became a metaphor for her ability to navigate the challenges of daily life. The gym became a sanctuary, a place where she could channel her frustration into productive energy, improving both her skills and her mindset. One afternoon, a particularly bold group of bullies tried to corner her in the hallway after school. They laughed loudly, mocking her for her quiet nature and her small size. She didn't panic. Instead, she took a deep breath, steadying herself as if she were stepping into the boxing ring. She calmly walked past them, making eye contact without fear. The bullies were taken aback by her composure. They had expected fear or anger, but she remained calm and confident. This small victory reinforced her belief in her own strength. As days turned into weeks, the pattern continued. The bullies tried new tactics, but she adapted to each one with patience and intelligence. She learned to anticipate their actions, to remain unshaken by their attempts to provoke her, and to focus on what truly mattered: her own growth, her own discipline, and her own goals. Each encounter became a lesson in resilience, teaching her that real power wasn't about dominance or aggression, but about control, focus, and inner strength. Even in the midst of constant teasing and attempts to undermine her, she found ways to stay positive. She focused on her studies, her boxing training, and the small joys of life outside school. She began to notice that some classmates quietly admired her patience and calmness, though they rarely said anything aloud. She realized that respect often came quietly, not from loud displays of power, but from consistent demonstration of character and strength. Her journey through school became a balancing act between her two worlds: the quiet, patient student who endured bullying, and the fierce, disciplined boxer who dominated the ring. Each day, she navigated the challenges of her school life with the lessons she learned from her training. She understood that strength came in many forms and that her ability to remain composed and focused was just as powerful as any physical achievement. Through all of this, she remained humble. She didn't boast about her boxing achievements or her ability to handle the bullies. She let her actions speak for themselves, quietly proving her worth and strength. She knew that one day, the bullies would see the truth, but until then, she remained patient, resilient, and focused on her own growth. The quiet girl at Lincoln High had become stronger with each passing day. She had learned that bullies could push, mock, and try to intimidate, but they could never touch her true strength. Her secret life as a national boxing champion gave her confidence, discipline, and a sense of power that no one at school could take away. And even as the bullies continued their attempts, she knew that she was ready for whatever challenges came next, both inside and outside the school walls. Outside of school, the girl's life was a world completely different from the one her classmates saw. While at Lincoln High she was quiet and studious, outside she became a young athlete who had trained for years to become a national boxing champion. The moment she stepped into her small-town gym, her posture changed, her eyes focused, and her every move showed discipline and strength. The sound of gloves hitting pads, the rhythm of footwork drills, and the echo of coaches' instructions became her rhythm, a world where she felt at home and fully herself. She had started boxing at a very young age. Her parents noticed her energy and determination and encouraged her to find an outlet for her focus and intensity. Initially, it was just a way to stay active and confident, but soon, she discovered a talent she never imagined she had. Her coach quickly realized her potential. He saw how fast she learned techniques, how precise her punches were, and how disciplined she became in training. "You have a gift," he said during one session, "but talent alone isn't enough. You need discipline, heart, and patience. And you already have all three." The girl trained for hours every day. Mornings were dedicated to runs, building endurance and speed. Afternoons were for technique drills, learning different punches, combinations, and defensive moves. Evenings were for sparring with more experienced boxers, testing her skills against opponents who were often bigger and older than her. Each session was physically demanding, but she loved the challenge. Every drop of sweat, every ache in her muscles reminded her that she was growing stronger, both physically and mentally. Her medals and trophies were carefully arranged on a shelf at home. Each one represented a victory, a challenge overcome, and the countless hours of dedication she had invested. While her classmates thought she was just a quiet, nerdy girl, they had no idea of the hard work and sacrifices that built the strength hidden beneath her calm exterior. These achievements weren't just about winning competitions. They were about proving to herself that she could face challenges, stay disciplined, and rise above expectations. She often reflected on the contrast between her school life and her boxing life. At school, she was underestimated, teased, and dismissed. At the gym, she was respected, capable, and admired for her skill. This dual life taught her a valuable lesson. Appearances could be deceiving, and strength often went unnoticed by those who didn't take the time to look. She realized that she didn't need to change who she was to earn respect. Her actions and discipline spoke louder than words or appearances ever could. Despite her success in the boxing world, she never let it affect her humility. She treated every training session with seriousness and respect, whether she was practicing alone or sparring with someone less experienced. She also learned valuable lessons about patience and control. Her coach always emphasized that boxing wasn't just about strength and aggression. It was about mental focus, timing, and strategy. These lessons carried over into her school life, helping her remain composed in the face of bullying and teasing. One afternoon, after a particularly tough training session, she sat quietly in the corner of the gym, wiping sweat from her face. She thought about the bullying at school and how powerless she often felt there. But in the gym, she felt empowered. She realized that her strength wasn't just physical. It was mental and emotional as well. Every time the bullies tried to get under her skin, she could draw on the confidence she built through years of disciplined training. Her boxing training also taught her the importance of strategy and foresight. She learned to anticipate her opponent's moves, to read subtle cues, and to stay calm under pressure. This skill became invaluable at school. When faced with bullies, she didn't react impulsively. She observed their behavior, predicted their actions, and responded calmly, never giving them the reaction they wanted. This patience frustrated the bullies, as they were used to immediate responses, either fear or anger, from their targets. She also developed a sense of pride in her individuality. She understood that being different was not a weakness. It was a strength. Her interests, intelligence, and quiet demeanor were all part of what made her unique. She embraced her identity fully, realizing that the bullies' opinions were irrelevant compared to the truth of who she was. Her confidence grew with each training session, each medal earned, and each time she remained calm in the face of teasing. Sometimes, she imagined what would happen if the bullies discovered her secret life. She pictured their shock and disbelief when they realized that the quiet, nerdy girl they thought they could intimidate was actually a national boxing champion. The thought made her smile quietly to herself. For now, she preferred to keep that world private, a safe space where she could be herself and continue to grow stronger. She also learned the importance of respect, both giving it and earning it. At the gym, respect wasn't demanded. It was earned through effort, skill, and attitude. She saw how her coach and fellow athletes treated each other with fairness, encouragement, and professionalism. She admired this environment, contrasting it with the schoolyard, where power was often based on fear, loudness, or popularity rather than genuine skill or character. The discipline of boxing influenced other areas of her life as well. She managed her time effectively, balancing schoolwork, training, and rest. She ate healthy meals, took care of her body, and set goals for both academic and athletic achievements. Her routine, though demanding, provided structure and purpose, helping her remain resilient even when school felt overwhelming. One evening, she reflected on her journey so far. She remembered the first time she stepped into the boxing gym, nervous and unsure of herself, and compared it to the athlete she had become. The growth she had experienced in just a few years amazed her. She realized that the same perseverance and focus that made her a champion could also help her navigate the challenges at school. She didn't need to change who she was. She only needed to trust in her own strength and judgment. Her secret life also became a source of motivation. Every time she faced teasing or minor humiliation at school, she reminded herself that she had already faced far greater challenges in the ring. This perspective allowed her to remain calm, even when the bullies tried to push her buttons. She knew that true strength wasn't about retaliation. It was about maintaining control and confidence, regardless of external circumstances. She began to notice small changes in her school life. Some students who had previously ignored her began to observe her quietly, curious about her calm demeanor. While the bullies continued their efforts, they increasingly found that their tactics were ineffective. Her unshakable composure, born from years of disciplined training, created a barrier that they could not easily penetrate. The girl's journey taught her another important lesson. Strength was not always visible. To most people at school, she appeared small, quiet, and vulnerable. Yet beneath that exterior was a young athlete capable of extraordinary feats. She learned to appreciate the power of patience, discipline, and self-belief. This understanding gave her confidence that could not be shaken by the opinions or actions of others. Even as she continued to navigate the challenges of school, she remained grounded. She never boasted about her achievements, nor did she seek validation from peers. Her satisfaction came from her own progress, the mastery of skills, and the knowledge that she was capable of handling whatever came her way. Her humility and quiet strength became her greatest assets, even if the bullies and classmates did not yet recognize them. At the gym, her coach often reminded her of the importance of mental strength. "A true champion knows that the mind is just as important as the body," he said. She carried these words with her every day, using them as a guide to navigate both her training and her school life. Each challenge she faced became an opportunity to practice patience, resilience, and self-control. By balancing her two worlds, school and boxing, the girl cultivated a sense of self-assurance that no teasing or bullying could diminish. She learned to value her own judgment, to rely on her skills and training, and to remain composed under pressure. She understood that true strength was not about dominating others, but about mastering oneself. Through her secret life as a national boxing champion, the girl developed qualities that extended far beyond physical ability. She cultivated resilience, patience, focus, humility, and self-confidence. These traits allowed her to navigate the complexities of school life, handle bullying with grace, and quietly earn respect from those who observed her strength from afar. As she continued her journey, she remained committed to her dual life: a diligent, intelligent student at school and a disciplined, powerful athlete at the gym. Each day brought new challenges, but she met them with the same unwavering calm and determination. She knew that the lessons she learned in the ring would carry her through life, helping her face obstacles, build confidence, and prove to herself that her strength was real, even if it was hidden from the world. The weeks passed, and at school, the bullying began to take a sharper edge. The group that had always teased her seemed determined to escalate their tactics. They were no longer content with small jokes or shoves in the hallway. They started to follow her more closely, laughing at her every movement, commenting on her clothes, and whispering insults that were just loud enough for her to hear. Even when she walked quickly through the corridors, they would pace alongside her, smirking, trying to get a reaction. She had grown used to these attacks. Her mind stayed calm and focused, just as it did in the boxing ring. She reminded herself that their words and actions could not control her feelings or define her worth. The lessons she had learned in training, about patience, strategy, and staying composed under pressure, were applied daily in these encounters. Each time they pushed, she remained unshaken. She refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her angry or upset. But even with her inner strength, the pressure of constant bullying was beginning to weigh on her. Some days, the jokes and whispers cut deeper than she expected. It wasn't just about being teased. It was about feeling like no one around her truly understood her, that the world at school did not recognize her real self. Her quiet demeanor and intelligence, which she took pride in, were twisted into reasons for ridicule. She would sit quietly at her desk, feeling the sting of humiliation, wishing for a moment of peace. One day in the cafeteria, things reached a new level. The bullies deliberately spilled a drink near her tray, laughing as it soaked part of her lunch and ruined the notes she had been reviewing. Others snatched her pencil case or pushed her books to the floor. She stayed seated, collected her belongings calmly, and resumed her lunch. Her refusal to react in anger seemed to confuse them, but it also left her feeling exhausted. Enduring constant ridicule, even with self-discipline, was draining. After that day, she spent more time reflecting on her options. She could ignore them, as she always had, or find a way to stand her ground that would make them see her differently. She thought about her boxing training, about how she faced opponents bigger and stronger than herself without fear. She remembered the focus and control required in the ring, and how each punch, each move had to be deliberate and measured. That same discipline could guide her at school. She didn't need to retaliate, but she could assert herself in ways they wouldn't expect. The next morning, the bullies tried a new tactic. They blocked her way in the hallway, laughing as they stepped closer, trying to intimidate her. Instead of panicking, she took a deep breath, recalling her sparring sessions where opponents would try to overwhelm her with size and aggression. She analyzed the situation calmly, looking for a way to navigate it without giving them the reaction they craved. She stepped aside with measured confidence, holding her head high, and walked past them. The bullies were left blinking, unsure how to respond to someone who didn't behave like a typical victim. Despite her composure, she still felt the weight of isolation. Most students avoided involvement, unsure whether to support her or simply stay out of trouble. She wished for even a single ally who would recognize her strength, both the visible and invisible kind. While she didn't outwardly need validation, the quiet desire for someone to understand her struggle lingered. Her boxing world offered that validation. Coaches and fellow athletes respected her. But at school, she was largely invisible, misunderstood, and underestimated. That afternoon, she went to the gym as usual, but she felt a heightened sense of urgency. The bullying had escalated, and she wanted to channel her frustration productively. Her coach noticed immediately. "You seem more focused than usual," he said. She nodded, her mind set on pushing herself harder in the session. She ran extra laps, practiced combinations with intensity, and sparred for longer than usual, imagining that each movement was a metaphorical defense against the challenges she faced at school. Her coach gave her feedback that day, reminding her that mental toughness was as crucial as physical skill. "The world will throw many challenges at you," he said. "It's not about fighting everything head-on. It's about using strategy, patience, and control. You already know how to do this. Trust yourself." She absorbed these words, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Her strength, she realized, was not just in her fists but in her mind and her ability to remain composed under pressure. Back at school, the bullying took another turn. The group of students began targeting her with rumors and false stories, hoping to isolate her further. Some classmates believed the rumors, making her feel even more alone. Yet she refused to react publicly, keeping her calm demeanor. She knew that showing anger or fear would only fuel their behavior. Instead, she focused on her work, on her studies, and on maintaining her own sense of self-worth. Despite the tension, small victories occurred. Occasionally, teachers recognized her focus and determination, praising her in class for insightful answers or well-done assignments. Though these moments were brief, they reminded her that not everyone was unaware of her abilities. These glimmers of recognition, though small, gave her a sense of balance, preventing the constant bullying from eroding her confidence entirely. The girl also continued to reflect on the contrast between her two worlds. At school, she was underestimated, while at the gym, she was respected and admired. This duality fueled her desire to prove to herself that she could navigate both environments successfully. She realized that one day, the bullies might see her true strength, but until then, she would rely on her own discipline, patience, and resilience to maintain control over her life. One day, after a particularly tense encounter in the hallway, she walked to the library for some peace. The quiet environment and rows of books offered a temporary refuge from the chaos. As she sat down and opened a book, she allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She thought about the future, about the potential for change, and about the lessons she was learning from enduring and navigating the bullying. She understood that these challenges were shaping her character, teaching her resilience, patience, and strategic thinking. As weeks passed, the bullies' actions grew bolder. They tried to trip her, hide her belongings, and even laugh at her quietly as she worked in class. Each attempt tested her patience, yet she responded consistently with calm composure. Her ability to remain unaffected by their tactics frustrated them further, leaving them unsure how to proceed. They began to realize that their usual methods of intimidation were ineffective against someone who had control over her own mind and emotions. At the gym, she worked even harder. Each punch, each combination, each session of sparring was a release of the tension built up from her encounters at school. The physical exertion provided an outlet for emotions that she could not openly express during the school day. Her coach noticed the intensity and encouraged her to maintain balance between exertion and control, reminding her that strength came from focus, not recklessness. One evening, as she sat in the corner of the gym, catching her breath after a long session, she realized just how much she had grown. The bullying, though painful, had forced her to develop qualities that were not just valuable in boxing, but in life as well: patience, composure, strategic thinking, and confidence. She understood that she was becoming someone who could face challenges without fear, whether in the ring or in the school corridors. The girl's journey through this period of intensified bullying taught her a critical lesson. Strength was not always about confrontation or retaliation. True power came from self-control, discipline, and resilience. She realized that she could face the bullies every day without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. And in doing so, she was asserting her own sense of authority over her life. As the school year continued, the tension between her calm exterior and the bullies' persistent attempts created a growing anticipation. She sensed that a turning point was approaching, a moment when her inner strength would no longer remain hidden. Her secret life as a national boxing champion was a reservoir of confidence and skill that she knew would one day prove invaluable, though she was patient enough to wait for the right moment to reveal it. Even as the bullying persisted, she continued to excel academically and athletically. Her studies remained meticulous, her gym sessions disciplined, and her mindset strong. Each day reinforced her understanding that resilience, focus, and inner strength were far more powerful than outward aggression. She learned to navigate the complex social dynamics of her school with subtlety, intelligence, and poise, all while cultivating a sense of self-worth that was independent of the bullies' opinions. Through all of this, she remained humble and thoughtful. She never boasted about her achievements, whether academic or athletic, and she never sought revenge. Instead, she let her actions, discipline, and unwavering composure speak for her. The bullies' attempts to undermine her continued, but she was no longer the quiet, easily intimidated girl they had hoped to control. She had become someone who understood her own power and was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, both in school and beyond. The tension in the school hallways had been building for weeks, and it was clear that the bullies were not going to let up. They seemed convinced that if they kept testing her, they could finally break her calm exterior. On one particularly warm afternoon, as the final bell rang and students rushed to gather their belongings, the girl found herself cornered by the same group of bullies who had been tormenting her for months. The hallway, usually bustling with noise and movement, seemed suddenly silent, as if the world itself had paused to witness what would happen next. The bullies blocked her path, laughing and making cutting remarks about her clothes, her quiet nature, and the way she walked. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of all the lessons she had learned in boxing. Patience, strategy, and control. She didn't panic. She didn't shout or cry. She simply stood her ground, keeping her body relaxed but ready, aware that she had the skills to handle any physical confrontation if it became necessary. Her mind was as sharp as her reflexes, analyzing the situation, noting each person's stance and possible intentions. One of the bullies, emboldened by the presence of the group, stepped closer, trying to intimidate her. He reached out to shove her, expecting the usual startled reaction. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she shifted her weight subtly, a controlled movement learned from countless hours of footwork drills, and maintained perfect balance. The bully's attempt to surprise her failed. The other students in the hallway began to notice the unusual calmness in her demeanor, sensing that something was different from the usual timid reactions they had seen. The girl's thoughts drifted momentarily to her training sessions at the gym. She recalled the countless sparring matches where opponents tried to overwhelm her with speed and power. She remembered how each time, she had relied on focus, timing, and strategy rather than sheer force. The same principles applied here. The bully's aggression might seem formidable, but it was predictable. She could navigate it with intelligence and composure. She had faced far more challenging opponents in the ring. As one of the bullies attempted to knock her books out of her hands, she reacted instinctively but controlled. She shifted slightly to the side, letting the books remain in her possession while keeping her balance. The movement was so smooth and natural that even some bystanders didn't notice the precision involved. The bully stumbled slightly, taken off guard by the unexpected skill in her movements. Whispers started spreading among the students nearby, a mix of curiosity and disbelief at her calm and confident reaction. The girl realized that she didn't need to escalate the situation with aggression. Her presence alone, the subtle control in her posture and movements, was enough to communicate strength. She didn't need to prove herself with violence. She needed only to show that she would not be intimidated. The bullies, however, were still relentless. They tried to corner her further, using the walls and lockers to limit her options. Each time, she adjusted her stance and shifted her weight with precision, staying calm under pressure and signaling, without words, that she was not an easy target. One of the bullies, frustrated by the lack of reaction, started shouting insults louder, hoping to provoke anger. The girl ignored the words, focusing instead on her breathing, her awareness of the space around her, and the patterns of the bully's movements. She felt the familiar surge of focus that she always experienced before sparring matches. Her training had prepared her for situations where maintaining composure under pressure was crucial, and now, in the most unexpected environment, those skills were being tested. The other students in the hallway began to notice the unusual intensity of the standoff. Some stepped back, sensing that this was not an ordinary confrontation. Others whispered quietly among themselves, wondering how the quiet girl had become so unshakable. The bullies, on the other hand, were starting to feel frustration and uncertainty. Their usual tactics of mockery and intimidation were failing, and for the first time, they were encountering resistance that was not rooted in fear but in disciplined calm. As the confrontation continued, the girl considered her options carefully. She could continue to remain calm and let the bullies eventually lose interest, as they often did when they realized their usual tactics weren't effective. Or she could assert herself in a way that would end the confrontation decisively without unnecessary aggression. Drawing on her boxing experience, she decided that controlled action, paired with her composed demeanor, would communicate her strength more effectively than any words. At that moment, one of the bullies made a sudden move, reaching aggressively toward her backpack. She reacted instinctively, moving with precision and control, maintaining her balance, and subtly repositioning herself to keep the bag safe. The movement was quick, deliberate, and calm, showing a level of skill that none of the bullies had anticipated. Their confidence wavered as they realized that she was not only unafraid but fully capable of defending herself. Some of the bystanders started to gather, sensing that something remarkable was unfolding. The girl's composure, the subtle but precise movements, and the unspoken strength she displayed created a palpable tension in the hallway. The bullies, who had expected to dominate her easily, were now on the defensive, unsure how to proceed. The balance of power had shifted, not through loud confrontation, but through quiet confidence and mastery of skill. The girl's thoughts briefly returned to her trophies and medals at home, symbols of her dedication and hard work in boxing. She felt a quiet pride, knowing that her training had prepared her for this unexpected moment. She understood that true strength was not about showing off or seeking recognition. It was about control, awareness, and the ability to respond effectively under pressure. These qualities were now evident to anyone paying close attention. The bullies, sensing their uncertainty, tried to regroup. They whispered among themselves, exchanging frustrated glances, attempting to coordinate their next move. But the girl remained composed, observing their body language, anticipating their actions, and remaining ready for any attempt to escalate the situation. Her calm, measured presence created a psychological edge, showing that she was not intimidated and that any attempt to force a reaction would fail. In that moment, the girl realized the full extent of her transformation. She was no longer just the quiet, studious girl who endured bullying silently. She had become someone who commanded respect through composure, skill, and inner strength. Her experiences in the boxing ring had prepared her not only physically but mentally, allowing her to navigate a high-pressure social situation with intelligence and poise. The confrontation gradually de-escalated. The bullies, frustrated and uncertain, began to back away, their confidence shaken by the unexpected display of control. The other students in the hallway looked on with a mix of awe and curiosity, witnessing the quiet girl demonstrate a level of strength that had been hidden from their view for so long. The girl, maintaining her calm demeanor, gathered her books and continued walking, her head held high, unaffected by the lingering tension. As she moved through the hallway, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had faced the bullies with composure, skill, and confidence, demonstrating that her strength was not dependent on aggression, but on discipline and control. The experience reinforced the lessons she had learned in the gym. True power comes from mastery of oneself, awareness of the environment, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. That afternoon, as she left school and headed to her training session, she reflected on the encounter. She realized that the skills she had developed through years of disciplined boxing had prepared her for challenges far beyond the ring. Her mental toughness, focus, and composure had allowed her to navigate a difficult social situation with confidence and grace, turning a moment of potential intimidation into a display of quiet strength. At the gym, she threw herself into training with renewed determination. Each punch, combination, and movement became a reaffirmation of her abilities. She understood that the lessons she applied in the hallway, patience, strategy, control, were just as important in the ring. The confrontation at school had become another form of training, testing her composure and reinforcing her confidence in her own strength. Her coach noticed the intensity in her session and commented, "You handled something challenging today, didn't you?" She nodded, a small smile crossing her face. She didn't need to recount the details. The experience had strengthened her resolve and reinforced the value of the discipline she had cultivated over years of training. She knew that her ability to remain calm and confident in the face of intimidation was just as important as any physical skill she had developed. As the day ended, she walked home feeling a sense of quiet triumph. She had faced the bullies without anger or fear, relying on the skills she had honed over years of hard work. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that challenges would continue to arise, but she now had the confidence to meet them head-on. Her dual life, as a quiet, studious student and as a disciplined, powerful boxer, had prepared her to navigate the complexities of both school and the world beyond. The girl knew that one day, the bullies and her classmates would fully understand the depth of her strength, both physical and mental. But for now, she was content in the knowledge that she had faced the challenge with integrity, composure, and skill. The encounter had been a turning point, a moment where her hidden abilities and inner strength had become evident, even without overt display. It was a quiet victory, a testament to the power of patience, discipline, and self-confidence. The days after the hallway confrontation felt different for the girl. There was a quiet tension in the school, a subtle shift in the way students and teachers looked at her. The bullies no longer approached her with the same boldness. Their smirks and laughter had less power now, replaced by a wary uncertainty. They had seen a side of her they hadn't anticipated, a quiet strength that was calm, controlled, and unshakable. For the first time, they seemed to question whether their attempts to intimidate her had been misguided. She walked through the hallways with the same composed demeanor, but she noticed small changes around her. Some students began to give her space, recognizing that she wasn't someone to be trifled with. Others glanced at her with curiosity, sensing that there was more to her than met the eye. Even teachers seemed to regard her with a bit more respect, acknowledging the resilience she had shown in the face of repeated bullying. It was a subtle shift, but it carried a powerful message. Her strength was now being recognized, even if quietly. At lunchtime, she chose her usual spot under the oak tree, but she wasn't alone. A few classmates who had previously kept their distance started sitting nearby, quietly reading or eating, sometimes offering a friendly smile or a brief word of conversation. She accepted these gestures without seeking attention or validation. She had learned that true confidence didn't come from the approval of others. It came from knowing one's own worth and abilities. The small signs of respect from her peers were welcome, but not necessary for her sense of self. Meanwhile, the bullies had begun to retreat, their previous boldness replaced by caution. They had realized that the quiet girl they had underestimated was far stronger than they thought. They no longer blocked her path or mocked her openly. Instead, they kept their distance, unsure how to interact with someone who had shown such poise and composure under pressure. The girl noticed this change but didn't celebrate it outwardly. She understood that respect earned through intimidation or fear was temporary and not as meaningful as the quiet acknowledgement she now received from those who truly understood her strength. Her secret life as a national boxing champion remained private, known only to her family and coach. She didn't feel the need to broadcast her accomplishments. Her confidence and calm demeanor were enough to communicate her strength when necessary. The gym continued to be her sanctuary, a place where she could train, release tension, and focus on her personal growth. Each session reinforced the lessons she had learned: discipline, patience, control, and resilience. One afternoon, after a particularly intense training session, she reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the countless hours spent practicing footwork, learning combinations, and sparring with stronger opponents. She remembered the first time she had stepped into the ring, unsure and nervous, and compared it to the athlete she had become. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had taught her skills and qualities that extended far beyond physical ability. She realized that the experiences at school, though difficult, had been part of her growth. The bullying, while painful, had forced her to develop patience, composure, and strategic thinking. It had taught her that true strength wasn't about aggression or dominance. It was about control, awareness, and the ability to respond effectively to challenges. These lessons were invaluable, shaping her into someone capable of handling both physical and social challenges with grace. At home, she arranged her trophies and medals neatly on the shelf, each one a reminder of her hard work, dedication, and achievements. They were not symbols of superiority but of perseverance and discipline. She understood that her strength came from consistent effort, self-belief, and the ability to remain calm and focused under pressure. The recognition of her accomplishments, both in boxing and in navigating her school life, was a source of quiet pride. As the school year continued, she noticed that her classmates were beginning to approach her differently. Some sought her advice on schoolwork, recognizing her intelligence and focus. Others observed her interactions with a newfound respect, noting her calm responses to challenges and her ability to handle herself with dignity. Even the bullies, while still present, kept their distance, no longer attempting to provoke or intimidate her. Her confidence grew with each passing day. She understood that strength was multifaceted, encompassing physical ability, mental resilience, and emotional control. She had faced challenges in the ring that required all three, and she had applied the same principles to navigate her school environment. The result was a balance of power and humility, allowing her to assert herself without aggression and to earn respect without seeking it. One afternoon, a younger student approached her in the library, timidly asking for help with a difficult assignment. She smiled and offered guidance, explaining concepts clearly and patiently. The interaction reminded her that strength could also be expressed through kindness, patience, and mentorship. She realized that her ability to remain calm and composed not only protected her but also allowed her to positively influence those around her. In the gym, her coach continued to challenge her, pushing her to refine her technique and build her endurance. Each training session reinforced the connection between discipline, focus, and confidence. She understood that the qualities she applied in the ring, awareness, patience, and controlled strength, were equally valuable in her daily life. The experiences she had endured at school, combined with her rigorous training, had created a foundation of resilience that would serve her in all future challenges. The bullies, gradually realizing that their efforts could no longer affect her, began to lose interest. They still whispered among themselves, but their attempts to provoke her were minimal. The girl continued to walk through the hallways with quiet confidence, aware of her own abilities and unfazed by the presence of those who had once sought to intimidate her. Her calm strength had created a buffer that protected her from unnecessary conflict and earned her a subtle but meaningful respect. Her journey had also taught her the value of humility. She never flaunted her achievements or sought to dominate others. Instead, she focused on personal growth, discipline, and self-awareness. Her success, both in school and in boxing, was the result of consistent effort and self-belief, not a desire to prove herself to others. This perspective allowed her to navigate challenges with grace and to maintain a sense of balance and perspective. One day, a new student joined Lincoln High, observing the dynamics among the students. They noticed the quiet girl who handled herself with calm confidence, unshaken by the usual teasing and bullying. The new student approached her, curious and respectful, asking questions about schoolwork and her experiences. The interaction was casual, but it highlighted the subtle influence she now had within her school community. Her resilience, composure, and quiet strength had become a model for others, demonstrating that true power is often understated and grounded in discipline. As the school year drew to a close, the girl reflected on her journey. She had faced consistent challenges, endured bullying, and maintained her focus and composure throughout. She had balanced her dual life as a student and a national boxing champion, applying lessons from the gym to navigate social pressures at school. Her experiences had shaped her into a confident, resilient, and disciplined young woman, capable of handling challenges both large and small. She understood that her story was not about defeating the bullies or proving herself to others. It was about self-discovery, growth, and the development of inner strength. She had learned that resilience, discipline, and composure were more valuable than outward aggression or the opinions of others. Her experiences had taught her that strength is not always visible, but it is deeply felt and consistently demonstrated through actions, choices, and the way one navigates the world. Her confidence and strength were now quietly acknowledged by those around her. Teachers, classmates, and even former bullies had begun to recognize her calm authority and the quiet power she carried. She had earned their respect not through confrontation or showiness, but through consistency, patience, and self-discipline. This respect, though subtle, was meaningful and lasting. The girl continued her training, setting new goals for herself in boxing and academics. She remained dedicated to her growth, understanding that discipline and hard work were ongoing processes. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with the same composure, focus, and resilience that had guided her through the difficulties of the school year. In the end, she had transformed not just her experience at school, but also her understanding of herself. She had discovered that true strength encompasses physical ability, mental resilience, and emotional control. She had faced adversity with patience and composure, turning challenges into opportunities for growth. Her journey demonstrated that quiet determination and disciplined effort can lead to profound personal development and lasting respect. As she looked forward to the future, the girl felt a quiet pride in her journey. She had endured, learned, and grown stronger, proving to herself that inner strength is more powerful than outward intimidation. Her dual life as a student and a national boxing champion had taught her lessons that extended far beyond the gym and the classroom, shaping her into a confident, disciplined, and resilient young woman ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.